Little more than an hour away from the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange, President-elect Donald Trump walks into office with a tricky economy. He's got some headwinds and some tailwinds to help us sort it out. Joe Krier from Krier Wealth Management.
Hey, Bruce.
So, the election is now history. And if you look at the history of the markets, it's not unusual that there is volatility on election eve, election day, and shortly thereafter. At one point, the markets tumbled down to 800 points. It's recovered a bit, and now I think futures are off about 300.
Yeah, it's still going to be a rocky day on Wall Street here, but the way this set up last night was that everybody was out on the ledge ready to jump regardless of who won. Half of them were going to go, half of them were going to stay, and a lot of the Trump voters weren't real happy with placing that vote, and the same thing with Clinton. So we have a world that's a little confused and just waiting for more information this morning, and uncertainty is the enemy of the markets.
You know, it'll steady. So is this really, at this point for investors, nothing more than a buying opportunity?
A lot of people are looking at it that way. You know, by historical measures, the market is a little bit richly priced right here. And history also says that about 80% of recessions, believe it or not, occur in the first year of a presidential term. So, you know, there's some areas that look pretty good with a Trump win, such as energy, infrastructure, maybe defense spending, certain parts of the healthcare industry. But as far as saying today, I say back off, let this thing settle down just a little bit. Missing a couple percent is worth the safety of knowing how it's going to play out.
And look, he doesn't take office till January 20th, and then there's that 100-day honeymoon. And then we get to see really how he plays with Congress. Do they play nice in the sandbox? What his tax policies are? What happens to the Affordable Care Act? And some very other big issues that are on Americans' minds.
Yeah, for sure. And I think tax policy is probably one of the biggest things that he can do. He talks about bringing jobs back to America and changing the corporate tax code. It's not a very popular thing to campaign on, but if you give companies incentives to keep jobs here, hopefully they're going to work their systems so that that's exactly what happens, and that would definitely be a long-term positive for the markets.
We mentioned the fact that he's got some headwinds and some tailwinds going into his presidency, the 45th president-elect. One of the headwinds happens to be rising interest rates. Yes. Everybody expects Janet Yellen to go ahead and raise those interest rates and the Fed to make that move come December. You know, so do they do that? What's the impact? And is Janet Yellen going to be around?
Interesting questions altogether, that's for sure. Rising interest rates tend to slow down economic activity and market activity. However, in this case, we've had abnormally low interest rates since 2008. So essentially what the Feds have been doing is waiting for the economy to get enough momentum so that they could normalize rates. We're not talking about slowing things down. We're just talking about going from 0 to something like 2%. And it's thought that the economy could potentially absorb that. We know Trump that hasn't been a big fan of the Fed and their approach. I think going into the election, they just wanted to stay out of the way, so they weren't judged one way or the other. So the percentage of polls for an interest rate increase in December, I think, is at about 70%. It's going up.
The other headwinds are sluggish job market and global slowdown. But how about the tailwinds? You got low gas, low interest rates, and seasonal tendencies.
Yeah, I mean, we're coming into December, January, typically the two best months of the year for the markets. Low gas and low interest rates do spur economic activity. Even if rates go up a little bit, they're still low by historical standards. So buying that first home or you know, filling your gas tank up for a trip across the country, it's not too bad a proposition right now.
Well, we learned last night that the words unexpected and unpredictable hold true this election season, so maybe the same for the economy. You just have to wait and see.
Thanks,
so,
Bruce.
Thank you.